Hey everybody, Eric Hayden here in the garden. Today we're past peak bloom. Still have some nice color in the garden, but we're slowly deadheading the roses that are spent. I'll show you the reason for that in a second. The point of this video is to talk about basil breaks. We'll show you one quickly here on Jewel Grace. What are those? Why are they a good thing in the garden? And how they are important for the future growth of the plant. First things first, I want to talk a little bit about deadheading. We mentioned we're past peak for the garden. So when the roses still look like that, you can leave them on, but when they're really starting to look not so good, we have a really good video on how to deadhead. Sometimes people complicate it, but the simple fact is if you're just removing this bloom before it does that and petals all over the garden, it's going to keep things cleaner. The other thing it's going to do, this rose right here, Randy Scott had some thrip damage. You're throwing away some insects that are otherwise making a home in that old bloom. So it's keeps the garden tidy, keeps it clean from insects and disease, and then it does encourage future growth. This is an example of a rose that was perhaps not deadheaded, but we cut blooms and give them to neighbors and things like that. So there's where we made the cut probably just about a week ago, and then you can see already the bud eye poking out. So you'll see things like cut down to the first set of 3 leaves, the first set of 5 leaves. I'll link to a video that I do that try to simplify things. Bottom line is just remove that spent bloom. Don't worry about it too much. If you don't get to it, Mother Nature's gonna, put forth another set of blooms anyway. But if you can remove it, it keeps the garden tidy. It keeps insects from having a good home, and it'll encourage the next set of blooms just a little quicker. And like I said, a set of 3 leaves, here's a bud eye poking out. Here's a set of 5 leaves and a bud eye poking out. So it doesn't matter really. The most important thing is that you're enjoying the garden, and if you have time, deadheading will keep things clean, and you'll get to your next round of blooms. Typically speaking, roses, once they've had a flush like this, 5 to 7 weeks later, you will have another round of blooms. And that's not to say that there won't be some new ones a little bit earlier. For example, Gemini is pretty much done its bloom cycle, but these blooms, these canes, have already come along quite nicely, and that's going to lead to our basil break discussion here in a second. So these are going to be a little bit ahead. So roughly speaking, 5 to 7 weeks after this deadheading, we'll have another flush of blooms. But of course, there's always some stragglers that are already ahead of the game. So basil breaks, what are they? How do they lead to future growth on the rose, and why are they important? They are extremely important, and we're going to use this example here. This is Jewel Grace. It had some severe canker. You can still see the signs of this, even into the month of May. So I've pruned most of it out. You might ask, why didn't I prune this out? We still have green leaves on it, so until I see signs that the cane is dying, I just kind of leave it there. So what a basil break is, the first thing you see is, notice how the leaves are purple, and they are vastly different than the more mature leaves over here. So sometimes people see this purple growth and think it's something different about the plant, and it is the future of the plant. A basil break, by definition, are new canes that are near the bud union, which is that ball, the graft, or near it. So in this case, this is the bud union down here, and you've got some new canes coming out of it. So these 2 new canes are baby canes. This is the future of your rose bush. So when you have older canes that die off, whether it's just natural age, or you have canes that die off because of a disease like canker, you often will start to see new growth, if it's a healthy bush, around the bud union. So that's what we're seeing here. And they'll start really, really small, and then they'll take off. One thing you certainly want to do is kind of baby them. Don't break them. If you've got rabbits, you may want to cover those areas. Sometimes they like to chew at those, and that is a sign of a healthy bush and new growth for the future. I see, so that's an example on a bush that is diseased, and it's looking for new life, and it needs new canes because these older ones are quite diseased with canker. I see another really good example. On the right we have Zach Nobles, and on the left the original plant, which is Let Freedom Ring. Great red. One thing I like about it is it's a nice red, and it tends to bloom a little later in the cycle, so it's lingers past when some of your other blooms have already peaked. So mature bush, healthy, no canker on this. It's doing its thing. But what do we have down here? We have a basil break. So I gave you the example near, on the bud union. Jewel Grace was on the bud union. This is an example down below, close to the bud union, but it's actually emanating from one of the canes. So the actual bud union is there. Here's a cane, and here's a basil break. All you need to know is when you see that, that is the health and future of your rose garden, and in particular that will be a new Let Freedom Ring cane. Canes usually last a few years, they get old, and then new ones come up via basil breaks. So things are looking really, really good. We're going to take one last look at another example. You may see literature online about how to encourage them. Things like Epsom salts, maybe alfalfa meal, other ways to encourage it. I'll tell you the truth, when I've seen the most basil breaks, alfalfa meal, or I use it as pellets, that has helped, but it's usually when the plant needs to produce them for the survival of the plant. So in that case of Jewel Grace, we're seeing basil breaks on it, where we're not seeing basil breaks in the rest of the garden outside of Let Freedom Ring and a couple others, because that plant needs to do it to survive. So the plant's going to do it when it needs to. You certainly can improve those chances of it occurring by having a regular fertilizer program and regular watering. But I don't think there's some miracle thing out there that are going to produce it, such as Epsom salts. Here's another example, Louise Estes, a little healthier than Jewel Grace, but it lost the middle of the bush to canker. And again, I'll zoom in here and pull back some of these leaves. This is pretty thorny, so I don't want to get pricked here, but you can see the canker there, dying back, and I continue to cut it. And then on that same plant, I need to cut some of this out. Where the canker has stopped, right below that is a new basil break. So here we go. Here's the canker. I'll probably prune that out because it will progress down the bush. So I'll cut that out. But from that same healthy cane, a little bit lower, we have a new basil break. In this case, it is from the cane itself, not the bud union. So basil breaks are new canes, and look at this. This thing is really doing well. Often their first blooms aren't the best. Sometimes they can be what we call a candelabra. Look at all these, buds. So it's not going to be one single bloom, but I digress. It's a really, really nice thing. Another time, sometimes you see it on younger bushes. This is White Princess. It's a newer maiden rose. You can get it at Wisconsin Roses, Steve Singer. So like all his roses, it's produced multiple good healthy canes, and then now in its second year, here's all this new growth. So here's our new basils, and in this case, this is coming from the multiflora, not the multiflora, but the bud union right above where the multiflora roots are. So that's an example of basil breaks from the bud union. So in summary, basil breaks are a good thing. You can get them from the bud union itself or down low on the plant. So as you are in your garden deadheading and watering, I encourage you just to give a quick little look, and whenever you see that purple growth, that is a good thing. Here's another example of some new growth on Dolly Parton, another rose that was really devastated by the canker, but it's coming back quite nicely. Hope everyone's doing well. As always, I appreciate the comments, and the biggest support you can give to the channel is share it with others to encourage growing roses. It is such a fun hobby. It can seem like work sometimes, especially when you're spraying and you've got black spot and you're deadheading, but we're expecting some rain here in the next hour. I've got the day off, so I cut the grass, did a little bit of deadheading, and now I'm just enjoying what the garden has to offer. We usually try to cut every couple days to give to friends, families, and neighbors the roses themselves, because no better way to share your love of growing roses than to share them with others. So I'll last leave you with Marilyn Monroe. You can see some of the faded blooms, but wow, almost each one of Marilyn Monroe has that perfect spiral shape. It's a bloom that lasts a while. I'd say the only downside of this one is, man, it has a lot of prickles or thorns. So other than that, good growing rose, and it seems to do well here a little bit farther south. It seems to enjoy the heat quite a bit. So that's Marilyn Monroe, a hybrid tea. Hope everyone's doing well. And again, basil breaks, hopefully you have some in your garden, and you will see them, especially if your rose is suffering and needs to regenerate itself. And this typically can be in the spring after that first flush. Have a good one, everyone.